All right, also this morning, we're tracking this out of San Francisco. Nordstrom, now the latest retailer to say goodbye to the city. At least 20 major stores have closed recently in the area. We're going to talk to the city's chief economist about those recent departures.
Ahead, another major retailer is calling it quits on downtown San Francisco. The company points to too much crime as part of the reason. The impact and the response to this move, we're going to tell you about it next.
All right, new developments this morning. The department store Nordstrom announced it is closing both of its downtown stores in San Francisco this summer. The retail chain says changing dynamics are behind the decision as crime and economic struggles have plagued the city since the pandemic. Police data shows a spike in burglary and theft since 2020, though it's still lower than years prior. CNN's Vanessa Yurkevich is here. And when you see something like this happening, you always wonder why. And this is happening in San Francisco, but other urban centers as well.
Certainly. And in San Francisco, Nordstrom now the 20th retailer to announce that they're leaving the city. Nordstrom saying that they're going to close down their two downtown locations, so on Market Street and then in the Westfield Mall. And they're citing changing dynamics in the city. So yes, it's absolutely about crime. In the beginning of this year, homicides are up 20% compared to last year. You mentioned the theft up 23% over the course of the pandemic. But there are other factors. Rising rent is a big factor. You also have people working from home, so there's not as much foot traffic in the area. And you also have just consumer buying habits changing. A lot of us are buying things online and not in person. But Nordstrom not alone in this. You have Whole Foods, Office Depot, CB2, Anthropologie, all leaving town. And Nordstrom, for their part, though, says that they're going to try to find jobs for all the employees that are working in those two downtown locations, because those two downtown locations make up 300,000 square feet. So that's a lot of employees. Nordstrom looking to put them in other positions elsewhere.
How much of this is unique to San Francisco, the Silicon Valley environment and the sort of the tech hub?
Yes, certainly. This is changing the economic landscape of San Francisco. So you have these retailers leaving town, you have major tech companies leaving town, and then you have home buyers leaving town. San Francisco is the #1 city where home buyers are now leaving town to look for homes in other areas. So all of this together is certainly changing the economic landscape of San Francisco. You mentioned it's happening in other cities as well, but really in San Francisco, we're having this kind of trifecta of an economic reality that's now playing out.
All right, Vanessa Yurkevich, thank you so much.
Nordstrom is not alone in this decision. In fact, the San Francisco Standard has tracked at least 20 major store closures in that Union Square area. That's really the center of downtown San Francisco since just 2020. The city is staring down a nearly $800 million budget deficit over the next 2 years. Let's talk about all of this with the chief economist for the city and county of San Francisco, Ted Egan. Good morning, Ted, and thank you.
Good morning. Nice to speak with you.
Video of robberies, have gone viral in San Francisco. Is this about crime?
Well, crime may be a part of it, but again, similar to your previous segment about New York, the crime data for San Francisco shows that property crime and violent crime are trending down. So, we have less crime in the neighborhood where Nordstrom was than we did before the pandemic. So I think maybe the perception of safety may be an issue that's depressing foot traffic, but I think there are bigger forces at play.
What are those bigger forces, Ted?
Well, San Francisco's had a slow recovery economically from the pandemic. And the biggest factor for that is that people aren't coming into the offices. Offices are a very big part of the city's economy. They generate 80% of our GDP. They're half full on a given day. With that, we're not seeing the business tourism and the conventions, and that gives downtown a kind of an empty feeling, and that makes it difficult for retailers.
So if people don't come back to the office, if they're not mandated to come back by their employer, is there any way that downtown San Francisco can be revived again? I mean, Nordstrom is such a staple. They call it, an anchor store, for example. We saw what happened with Whole Foods in another part of San Francisco leaving. I know they're not exactly the same, but if people don't come back to work, what does it become?
Well, I think we need to wait for the office market to adjust, and it's been a slow process. It's a slow process in San Francisco as it is in other cities. But businesses still need offices. They just don't need as much office space as often as they did before, and the office market is going to have to adjust for that. We're going to either need to see new tenants coming in, or some of that space is going to have to be used for other purposes. That kind of adjustment has to take place before we get the daytime population in San Francisco back to what we're used to. And then it's going to be a better environment for retailers.
The San Francisco Chronicle had a really interesting report, and the headline was San Francisco could be in for the biggest doom loop of all. So I had not heard the term doom loop before, but this is essentially an economic freefall for the city, and one store leaving makes the next thing to leave, and it's just this bad, bad cycle. Can San Francisco avoid that at this point, or is it happening?
I don't think it's happening yet. I think there's a risk of it happening in the future. But when we look at the economic data, we see things trending up in a way that doesn't sort of fit the doom loop narrative. Again, it's been a slow recovery. But for example, taxable sales in our downtown are 10% plus higher than they were last year. It's just been a slower recovery because we're waiting for really the future of downtown to sort itself out.
But what if the best case scenario doesn't happen? What if rents don't go down, people don't come to work? Then are you looking at an entirely new landscape, which, by the way, plays into the budget deficit issue because of, taxes that are paid there?
I mean, there are a number of things, difficult decisions for the city and for other actors in San Francisco over the next few years. The city is going to face budgetary pressures because of remote work and because of the lack of recovery in hotels. And the transit agencies, which we rely on to make sure downtown is full. We can't really get to a full downtown without transit service. They're facing their own fiscal issues. The issues about crime could lead into a situation where people are avoiding downtown, and that makes the environment there worse. Again, I don't think that's the direction we're headed now, but that's a risk. So there are a number of things we need to get right over the next few years. But I think the idea of a doom loop is that, this is a downward spiral we can't control. I think we have a lot of control.
Yeah. Look, there's still a lot of wonderful things about the city of San Francisco, a place I certainly love. So I know we're focusing on the challenges here. There's still a lot of great there. Ted Egan, thank you and good luck